Alright lads, welcome to my review of the T-80BVM. This is a rank 7 battle rating 11.0 main battle tank located in the Soviet tech tree. To unlock this vehicle you're going to have to grind out 400,000 RCP points before purchasing the tank for a cost of 1,030,000 silver lions. To crew this vehicle it's going to cost you 300,000 silver lions, and then to purchase the expert and ace qualifications it's going to cost you 1,030,000 silver lions and 2,100 golden eagles respectively. In terms of the repair cost, this tank is going to set you back 4,184 silver lions when fully upgraded. Being a Soviet vehicle, when it comes to customization, we have a wide variety of camouflage available for Golden Eagles, but at the time of recording, there currently isn't any guiding marketplace camos. In this review, we're going to look at the mobility, armor, and firepower of this vehicle, before finishing with a conclusion. We now come on to the engine and mobility, and the T-80BVM is powered by an engine producing 1,250 horsepower. Combined with the vehicle's weight of 46 tons, it gives us a pretty good power to weight ratio of 27.2 horsepower per ton. This is very similar to the T-80U, and you do have that same really high acceleration that you find on the T-80U. Now, for me personally, I think the T-80U is still a little bit more snappy in terms of acceleration, but it's neither here or there. We now come on to the top speed of this vehicle, and we can achieve 70 km per hour forwards, but only a measly 11 km per hour in reverse. While this is better than the Soviet standard of about 4 km per hour in reverse, which you'll find on the T-72s, 11 km per hour in reverse is still pretty bad, especially by NATO standards. Another Russian characteristic is the lack of neutral steering, meaning you will not be able to turn on the spot, something which NATO vehicles can do with ease. Overall, the mobility of the T-80BVM is kind of a little bit lacking compared to the T-80U, but it's still a lot better than the T-72 and T-90 series of tanks in my opinion. Alright lads, we now come on to the armour and survivability section. Now, I want to make it clear from the very beginning that the T-80BVM is a modification of a very early T-80 standard tank. So this isn't a direct follow-on from the T-80U. I'd say that the T-80U and the T-80BVM was kind of separate divergent upgrades. You'll notice that the T-80U has actually got a different turret. Now this is a better turret in real life, it was smaller, but a bit more protected. If we compare it to the BVM, you see there's a lot bigger commander's hatch here. T-80U, there's a very small one. So the T-80U is still going to be the king in terms of frontal protection, at least in terms of the turret. The T-80BVM does have a few tricks up its sleeve, which we'll show you. But just like every other Soviet main battle tank, we have a crew of 3. We've got a driver, a gunner, and a commander, if you can see him just chilling down there. We have the same very broad upper frontal plate made of composite armour, and our turret cheeks are also full of composite armour. This is slightly different than the T-80U's turret, as I mentioned, so you're not going to have that massive, just sheer thickness of armour, but it will get the job done. Now you can see here, in the T-80BVM, we do have a relict ERA as standard. We have relict on our side panels, our upper frontal plate, and our turret cheeks. So this gives us 250 mils against kinetic and 600 mils against heat. So this is very effective. Compare this to the T-80U, which was the go-to standard for Soviet protection. This only has contact 5 pretty much everywhere. It's just a big upgrade over that T-80U. But again, you've got better ERA protection on the BVM, but you've got less actual thickness on your turret basically. So basically just don't try and tank stuff on the turret like you can do in the T-80U. Now we're going to take a look at the armour. We're going to be using the DM53 round fired by the Leopard 2A6. Now as you'd expect, the lower frontal plate on this thing is absolutely nothing. 200 mils of armour, 8 inches, pretty much nothing. Easily penetrated by pretty much every APF SDS round in the game. Now moving up to the upper frontal plate, we do have that massive block of relic ERA which we spoke about earlier. This does give us pretty good protection, as you can see here. At least for the lower part of the upper frontal plate, we have over 800mm of protection. Still do have that same Soviet weak spot of the driver's port. Now in game, you're probably going to be looking at it like this, because the Soviet vehicles are a bit smaller. But it's still a very wide opening here. Unless you're going to absolutely rush in your shot, you should still be able to get a shot in here, and it will kill the tank. Now going up to the turret, and you can see that the relic ERA again does a really good job of actually stopping rounds. This relic actually defeats it before it even contacts the turret. There still is a massive weak spot, which is the gun breach, which is the same for pretty much every single tank in the game, at least in terms of top tier. But around the cannon breech we do have about 500mm of penetration. It will protect you from most of the early rounds in game, but not the later battle rating 11.0 ones. Turning the camera to the side of the vehicle, and again, just like every other Soviet main battle tank, we have next to no armor on the sides really. We do have a little bit here where we have the relict, but around the center of mass where you have the ammo carousel just here, we all have around 100mm of armor. So pretty much IFVs will be able to kill you from this way. Moving up to the turret, the protection is a little bit better, around 200mm. Goes up and down in some places. Obviously where the relict is here, it's going to be a lot higher. But shooting here is just going to kill the gunner and the commander, obviously, instantly killing the tank. Alright boys, now come on to the good stuff. This is the weapons and firepower. Now the T-80BVM is armed with a 125mm 2A46M1 cannon. It has a reload rate of 6.5 seconds, and we'll get onto that shortly. This is an autoloader just like the other T-80s in game. In terms of vertical guidance characteristics, we have 5 degrees of gun depression, 15 degrees of gun elevation. Not amazing, but it's not terrible. It's kind of like the French oscillating turrets. It is a little bit less than the NATO standard of 10 degrees depression, 20 degrees elevation, but it certainly is doable. If we take a look at the weapon reloading skill under the loader section, we have a base reload speed of 6.5 seconds and a top reload of 6.5 seconds as I said. This is an auto-loading system, so it doesn't really matter what crew level you have. So it's very friendly for lower skill crews. But that's beside the point. If you're probably going to be playing this vehicle, you're probably going to have a good crew. If we move to the targeting skill under the gunner section, we have a base turret rotation speed of 28 degrees per second, which rises to 40 degrees per second with an ace crew. Again, it's a little bit short of the NATO standard, but it's still more than doable. It's pretty good for Soviet standards, but it's pretty average for NATO standards. Moving on to the modifications, I want to point out that this tank gets access to smoke grenades, a laser rangefinder, as well as 3rd generation thermal imaging. In terms of ammunition, we have our stock warhead, which is the 3BK-18M. This is a heat fest round which travels at 905 meters per second, and it's capable of penetrating 476mm of armor at 100 meters, angled at 30 degrees. Our second stock shell is the 3OF-26 high explosive round. It contains 5.4 kilograms of TNT, which gives it 42mm of explosive penetration. Again, this is pretty good for memeing, especially with the new overpower mechanics, but it doesn't really effective on the battlefield. Our first APFSDS round is the 3BM42 Mango round. It travels at 1700 meters per second and can punch through 413mm of armor angled at 30 degrees at a range of 100 meters. Before we cover our final APFSDS round, we have the 9M119M1 tandem warhead missile. This travels at a speed of 350 meters per second and contains 4.7 kilograms of TNT. Its high explosive anti-tank warhead gives it 736mm of penetration at armor angled at 30 degrees. Now this is a tandem warhead, meaning it will be able to defeat ERA armor. And finally for today, in terms of ammunition, we have the 3BM60 round. This travels at 1660 meters per second, so a little bit slower than the Mango round, but it's capable of penetrating 486mm of armor angled at 30 degrees. It's a range of 100 meters. It's not really as good as the DM53, at least in terms of angled penetration. It does have 580mm of flat penetration, which it sounds good on paper, but you can't really take that into account in game because tanks at top tier are not driving around with flat armor, they're all angled. So just bear that in mind. Apart from your main gun, you have a rifle caliber machine gun mounted coaxially, as well as a pintle mounted 12.7mm machine gun fired by the commander. To conclude, the T-80BVM is a bit of a mixed bag for me. As a T-80 is my favourite vehicle in game, I am naturally going to be very harsh on the BVM, the natural successor to the T-80U. I did enjoy playing this tank, and the upgrades are useful. The tank's armour has bounced several rush shots from layer 2A6s, but of course, if those players had aimed, I would have died. This is a harsh criticism, as the same could be said about all tanks in game. The additional armour has had a slight effect on the mobility of this tank however, it just feels a little bit slower than the T-80U. But the BVM is still very fast, at least by Soviet standards. We then have the gun, which isn't really unique, as the same gun is found on most of the other top tier Soviet vehicles, but a major change is the thermal imaging. The T-80U only has 1st generation thermals, whereas the BVM receives 3rd gen, making it much easier to identify targets. Once spotted, your powerful ammunition makes all other tanks in this battle rating mincemeat, so long as you take your time to aim at weak spots of course. But overall, I think that the most important change in this update has been the new APF-SDS rounds for the top tier Soviet tanks. The addition of the BVM is nice, but ultimately it's just a faster T-72B3. I will be playing this tank more, and I'm glad they added it, but the Soviets didn't really need this vehicle, and its addition isn't going to change the meta. In my opinion, it puts the Soviets on par with the Germans now, but doesn't really give Russia an edge in terms of gameplay. Alright lads, thank you very much for watching this video. What do you guys think about this vehicle? If you have any questions or suggestions to improve the channel, then please feel free to leave a comment below. I now have community memberships enabled for the channel. If you'd like access to behind the scenes footage, as well as access to content a few hours early, then please do consider becoming a member. I'd also like to mention that I now have a Twitch account, where I stream pretty frequently. So if you'd like to follow me there, my Twitch handle is SAKO Sniper, the same as this YouTube channel. But if you do enjoy these sorts of reviews, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. But more importantly lads, I hope you have a great day, and thank you very much for watching.